What if the reason you feel broken and lost and inadequate and not good enough and like you'll never achieve what it is you're trying to achieve is not because the world is a horrible place and you're at some sort of disadvantage and you're not capable of it, but rather because of a story you're telling yourself. And were you to change that inner story, your external world would reflect that change. Now, this is a term known as confirmation bias. This is something that's grabbed at my attention for a long time, and very specifically, recently, this whole idea of confirmation bias, you may have heard of it. Confirmation bias is essentially, it's kind of like blinders, where you're not seeing reality as it is, but rather you're seeing reality as you prefer it to be, as you would like it to be. Where you're sort of weeding out any information or any people or any situations that go against the grain of what you believe to be true. Because, you know, when we're standing in a certain perspective, we want to feel right. We want to feel right and just in that perspective. And when we feel challenged or when we feel like we might be wrong, there arises fear and insecurity in that. It means that we might not be standing in the best position, standing in the most optimal position. So what we do as a sort of natural defense mechanism against this is we sort of get rid of things that disagree with our inner narrative, our inner dialogue, and we seek out things that go with that inner narrative, that are congruent with that inner narrative. Now, I actually have a really funny example of this. This happened literally just the other night. So, you know, like the presidential state address or whatever it's called, where Trump came on and gave this state of the address or whatever it's called. I'm not very learned on politics or whatever, but there was this state address thing that Trump did. And I was hanging out with my grandfather downstairs watching the news with him, and he just so happened to be on the channel that Fox News is aired on. Now, my grandfather doesn't watch Fox News. He watches, what's it called? NBC or something like that. I don't even know. But he watches a different news anchor. So here's the thing. The state of the address is the same regardless of what news channel you're watching it on. But my grandfather goes against Fox News. Fox News is like Republican leaning or whatever. And he's leaning right or see, I don't even know. Like he's a Democrat or whatever. So the state of the address comes on and my grandfather says, well, this isn't the normal news channel that we watch. I'm going to switch to the one that I usually watch. And I said, like, he's giving the same speech. It's being aired on all these different news anchors. Why does it matter which news channel you're watching? Well, I don't know if Fox News is credible. So if you don't know if they're credible, why don't you learn about what they have to say? And so learn if they're credible or not. What he's doing by changing the channel to the other news anchor is he's getting rid of things that go against the grain of what he feels to be true, of his political stance. He's weeding out, he's getting rid of the Republican perspective of the state address that Trump did and putting himself in the Democratic view of it. It's the same state address, but he would rather watch it from the Democratic perspective, even though it's the same thing. And the reason this is because it is conforming to what he believes to be true. It's the same speech. It's just two different news anchors, you know? And see, what's different is the narrative that news anchor is representing. The Republicans are obviously like pro-Trump, and the Democrats are like, oh, Trump's a bad guy, you know, whatever. My grandfather would rather go to the channel that says, Trump is bad, Trump is bad, Trump is bad. You know what I'm saying? Even though it's the same speech. And I just thought that was really interesting. And, you know, for another personal example, I believe in God. I don't have a face to that God other than, like, the entirety of reality itself. Like, I believe in a higher spirit. I believe in God. And one time I was watching this debate, this philosophical debate, debating the existence of God. And when the atheist, the non-believer in God, started talking, he started giving, like, valid, rational reasons justifying his stance. And I felt I clicked out of the video. I like closed off the video. I was like, oh, I need to get out of this. And the reason I did that, I realized in that moment, was his view was challenging my view. And it made me insecure. It made me feel like that he might poke a hole in what I think. I might be wrong. So I'm going to not listen to what he has to say because he might just poke a hole in my philosophy. But when I realized that that's why I clicked off the video, I went back into the video and listened to it. I considered his perspective, because what does it mean to be open-minded if you're not willing to digest other perspectives? That's what I realized with my grandfather is he's not willing to digest the perspective of the Republican side of things. He's going to stay strictly to the Democrats because the Republicans are, you know what I'm saying? That's what it means to be closed-minded. Now, you may notice as well that, like, your friends generally think along the same lines of you. If you come across somebody and they strongly disagree with you and they lead a life completely differently than you, you're not really going to resonate on that deep of a level. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about like compatibility. I'm more so talking about where we situate ourselves, the people we associate ourselves with, the situations we find ourselves in, and the way that we view the world is run through this filter where we're seeing what we want to see. It said motivation affects perception, where if you drive through a town, there's 3 people in a car and they drive through a town. The guy driving the car, it's his car, and he hears a sound in his car. He's gonna see any repair shops, any auto repair buildings, any auto repair shops, That's what he's gonna see as he drives through the town. Another person's driving through the town and they're hungry, so they're gonna see all the places that are offering food, Another person drives through the town and they wanna go shopping, so they're gonna see all the stores that are offering the things he's trying to buy. They just went through the very same town, but they all saw a different town because of where they were looking, the perspective through which they were looking. This is confirmation bias. It's where we don't want to consume information that goes against what we think because it disgruntles our belief system. Now, not only does confirmation bias extend into, our friend groups and the way we view the world, but also confirmation bias is what's limiting you from stepping into an entirely different way of living your life. Confirmation bias is your inner narrative. The thing that it's like blinders. You wear blinders and you don't see things that go against the grain of what you think. So if you think to yourself, I'm not good enough, and somebody comes up to you and they say, hey man, you're good enough, you're not gonna believe them because you have no sort of basis, no foundation up that you can believe them. They're telling you something that goes against the grain of what you think to be true. And because you would rather be right than free, you're going to reject their compliment. If you think, I'm not good enough, I'll never have a career, I'll never have my own business, I'll never have this dream job. If you believe that, you're not going to have the motivation and the incentive to take the steps necessary to get that dream job, to make that business a reality. What it takes to change your life is to believe that it's possible. And if you don't believe that it's possible to change your life for the better, you're not gonna try. So that inner narrative, which is the very same thing of the confirmation bias, you're staying in this little bubble of your own belief system. You're closed-minded. That's what confirmation bias is. The inner narrative is closed-minded. It believes what it believes. It would rather suffer and think that it's right than be wrong, admit that it's wrong, and thus evolve and grow. See, this is a lot of the time why we keep attracting toxic partners. We have this narrative that I keep attracting toxic partners. I am so loving and so giving and everybody just uses me. That's what you believe. That's what you believe. It's a vibration. It's an energy that you're emitting. I am so loving and everybody just uses me. Nice to meet you. I am loving and everyone uses me. It's an identity that you're emanating. So when somebody comes along and they're actually a good partner, they're actually a good companion, they're a healthy, well-rounded individual, and they offer you love, they offer you reciprocation, it's weird to you because what you're used to is that story you've been telling yourself based off of that one traumatic experience you had, which set off the domino effect of continuing to attract the same kinds of partners. It creates a pattern, a dynamic. The good partner comes along and they make you feel weird because they go against the grain of what you think to be true. So then comes along self-sabotaging, where you essentially push the good person away because they aren't in line with the toxic dynamic pattern that you're telling yourself. So you weed people out. It's confirmation bias. If you believe I keep attracting toxic partners, you're gonna push away everybody that's not toxic and seek out the ones that are toxic. Because once again, you would rather be right and suffering than admit you're wrong and grow and evolve. It's wild. It's wild. And your belief that you're projecting onto the world, what if that's exactly what's shaping your life out to be the way it is? Now, we all talk about this thing, manifestation, manifest your dreams, and you know what I'm saying? You gotta believe that it's real. They're not joking, bro. They're not joking. If you don't think you're capable of creating the life that you wanna live, you're not going to have the drive to do so. And even, let's just say, you don't believe you have what it takes to get this dream job. Somebody comes along and they offer you a position in that dream job. You may decline it literally because you think you can't, you don't have what it takes. Your reality is trying to lift you up out of your inner negative toxic paradigm, but you're declining it because you feel more safe in that toxic dynamic. You would rather keep telling yourself, I don't have what it takes, and keep having experiences that validate that reiterate that story you're telling yourself so you can say, see, I don't have what it takes. I keep messing up. I'll never have my own business. I'll never have a partner. I'll never find somebody that actually loves me. You're sort of married to that story. And it's all because you keep reiterating that story. And if you believed it to be possible to let go of that story, then your life would kind of start to reflect it. You would start to loosen those blinders. You would open those blinders a little bit. You would see that there is an entire reality around you that you've been filtering out because of a story you've been feeding yourself. You know how there's only the rainbow is like a fraction of the actual spectrum of light that there is, but there's only, the colors of the rainbow that our eyes can see. That's how confirmation bias works. There's an entire reality. You can live the reality that you want. But what it takes is to let go of the story you're telling yourself that is the very thing that's limiting you from creating and manifesting that reality. Now, see, doubt is one thing. Doubt is like when you're pursuing a goal, when you're pursuing a project, when you're working on a project, when you're pursuing a dream, doubts will undoubtedly arise. They will come up. You don't have what it takes. This is a dumb idea. You'll never complete this. Nobody will like this. You're not good enough. All this stuff. And when you've dedicated your life to being somebody who will persevere, you see doubts as just little thoughts. They're little echoes of a past lower self version of you. And you see that those doubts are they're the lower self trying to get you to go back into your comfort zone. Because what it means to level up is to lean into the unknown. To grow. You don't know what it means to go outside of your comfort zone. And outside of your comfort zone is where your growth is. Growth is like a new level. It's a new level that you don't yet know. And what you know is the story you're telling yourself. So if you feel trapped and like nothing's changing and you're stuck in this cycle of negativity and toxicity and inadequacy, feeling like you're not good enough, that is the known. That is safe to you. And when you start to play with the idea that you are good enough, you are worthy, you are valuable, you do have what it takes to create the reality you want, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. Even though that uncomfortability is exactly what it takes. It's the prerequisite in creating that reality. It's only uncomfortable because it's going against the grain of the story you've been telling yourself. The negative, lower self confirmation bias is saying, no, you don't have what it takes. You don't have what it takes. Go back to your job. Go back to your toxic partner. Stop working on this project. Nobody's going to like it. They're all going to laugh at you. It's trying to keep you... See, the ego, that's the voice of the ego. It's trying to keep you alive. The ego just wants to survive. The ego doesn't want to thrive. The ego wants to survive. And if surviving means keeping you in a toxic dynamic because you feel safer in it because it's more familiar, then it will do so. But see, what it takes to thrive is to hear your egos, you don't have what it takes, you're not good enough, it'll never work out, people will laugh at you. You hear that and you say, okay, I get it. That's what I used to think, but that's not who I am anymore. I am somebody who pursues their goals. I am somebody who succeeds in their goals. I am somebody who, and then you're going after your goal and then you fail. It falls, you mess up. Like how do you get good at something if you don't mess up multiple times? The master has failed more than the student has even tried. You ever heard that one? You're gonna fail along the way. You're gonna trip and fall. But the idea in being dedicated and devoted to this higher self is to get back up and keep moving. And when you pursue a goal and then you fail that first time, or there's some sort of setback, your ego will go, see, you don't have what it takes, you'll never do it, it's not gonna work. Go back to safety, go back to playing small, go back to being quiet. You're not gonna succeed. When you're dedicated to that goal, you take that failure and you say, this failure is a sign of progress. This failure is a sign of experience. This failure is a sign of growth. And you get up, you hear your ego saying, you don't have what it takes, you don't have what it takes. And you say, I hear you, but that's not who I am anymore. And you keep going. I'm telling you, man, confirmation bias is that inner narrative you're telling yourself. You're wearing blinders. You're not seeing reality as it is. You're seeing reality as you prefer it to be. And you may say, I don't prefer to see reality like I'm a failure and I can't pursue I can't succeed in my dreams and I'll never be fit and I'll never be financially comfortable and I'll never have a partner. I don't prefer to see reality that way. Well, you do. Because that's the story you're telling yourself. You have the choice, you have the opportunity, the privilege to change that inner narrative in any given moment. Alan Watts says, you are under no obligation to be who you were 5 seconds ago. You can change it. If you want to be somebody who succeeds, go after it. Do it. The only thing holding you back from pursuing the life that you want to live and then eventually living the life that you want to live is doubt. Doubt shows up. The difference between the guy who succeeds and the guy who fails is the guy who succeeds sees the doubts as a manifestation of a past self that he's let go of. And the guy who fails is somebody who sees his doubts and believes them. And he believes them not because he's not as good as the guy who succeeds, but because he feels familiar with those doubts, with that inner narrative, with that story. Growing and leveling up and evolving and becoming a higher and more refined version of yourself, there's going to be a lot of fear oriented around that. There's going to be a lot of uncomfortability. There's going to be a lot of unknown. It's very shaky ground. You don't know who the hell you're becoming. And the reason you feel trapped, the reason you're stuck in this negative pattern of living is because you're staying stuck in this story you're telling yourself of, I'm not good enough, or I'll never have a partner, or I'll never be fit, or the world is pointless, or whatever your story is, which is why you're feeling stuck. You're living in that. You're living in that, and you're not realizing that you have what it takes to change that story. That story changes just like that. Your identity can shift just like that. And you'll see that a certain experience you have will catalyze your very self into becoming an entirely new version of yourself. And often it's the hard, challenging times that finally push us over that edge. So it's really interesting how what we see in the world is the story we're telling ourselves. The external world is a projection of the story we're telling ourselves about it. We think we're seeing reality as it is. No, we're seeing reality as we're telling ourselves it to be. And when you change that inner story, how's it said? When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's obvious after a while. The world isn't intrinsically anything. It isn't intrinsically good. It isn't intrinsically bad. It isn't anything. You bring to life meaning, story, purpose. You define the game. So why are you defining a game in which you lose? If you're dealt an unfortunate hand, something bad happens to you, you can take that as growth, as experience. You can use that to your advantage to grow. It's gonna be really shaky, the process of growing, the process of shedding past versions of yourself. But man, that shakiness, that feeling of the unknown, that feeling of insecurity and vulnerability, that's just what it takes. That's like the goo inside the chrysalis before the caterpillar is transformed into the butterfly. So the idea of being closed-minded, the idea of confirmation bias, where you don't watch, like for example, you don't watch videos that go against things that you think. You don't read books that go against things that you think. You don't listen to people or take advice from people that go against the grain of what you think and feel. You don't hang out with people that go against the grain of what you think and feel. That very blinder effect, that confirmation bias, is what's keeping you trapped in that negative way of living that you can't seem to break free of. And it's this weird, devilish story where you would rather be right and suffering than wrong and growing. What it takes to grow is to realize that what you're growing from was a lower self version of you. Somebody who didn't quite understand. Somebody who didn't think they were good enough. You need to let go of those negative impositions that you're creating. That's what's holding you in that prison. You know, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. It's that whole idea. It's up to you to change that inner narrative. It blows my mind how you won't see the potential in life if you don't believe that it's there. You won't manifest the life that you want to live if you don't think that you can. It's incredible. It's incredible. And then, funny enough, right when you realize, I have what it takes, I can do this, boom, it sets this momentum. It sets this trajectory where suddenly there's this surplus of energy, of passion, of motivation, of inspiration that was waiting for you to activate it. And what it takes to activate that energy, that momentum of growing and evolving, is realizing that you have what it takes. Letting go of the story you're telling yourself that you don't have what it takes. What it means to be open-minded is being open-minded is the prerequisite. It's the sort of, that's the state of mind you need to be in to grow. You might be wrong, you know? You might be wrong. You might not be seeing things as they actually are. You might actually be good enough. You might actually have what it takes. You may very well be capable of creating that business, of getting that, of landing that job. Maybe you will get a partner. Maybe you will get fit. Maybe you will live the life that you want. It takes the courage to believe in yourself. And it's so wild that the courage to believe in yourself, the fact that it's, I have to say, courage to believe in yourself. It's because so many of us live in this small version of, I'm not good enough and I don't have what it takes and, you know, everybody's gonna judge me. And we all play small, but we're all creators. We are all, within you is who you wanna be. Who you want to be is in a dormant seed form, waiting for you to shed and let go of the story you're telling yourself that's keeping that seed from growing. It's in you. It's all within you. Inside the seed, inside an oak tree seed is an entire oak tree waiting to be planted in the right conditions. And the right conditions are being open-minded and believing in yourself. Believing that you have what it takes. Thinking on the bright side for once, not adhering to the negative story that you've been telling yourself for years. It's wild. It's wild the way that our perspective limits our growth. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like on this video because it really helps me out. I really appreciate it, and it helps get this video recommended to more people like you. If you're feeling stressed, lost, anxious, restless, ungrounded, or anything in between, I highly recommend you go and check out my free 45-minute guided meditation that's available here on YouTube. This meditation is aimed towards tuning you back into your natural, authentic self. Something that is all too easy to lose sight of in this racy culture that we live in these days. Listening to this meditation will point you back towards your fundamental self. It will bring you back to the basics. It will bring you back to the effortless, natural self that you are, which is, as I said, so easy to lose sight of. And I can promise you that listening to this meditation will put you in a place of tranquility and will tune you back into the innate wisdom of your being. So again, if you're feeling stressed, restless, ungrounded, lost, or anything of that nature, go and check out this guided meditation, and I can assure you that it will at least tune you back in to your immediate surroundings and the tranquility and peace that is present in this moment. I will link this meditation right here in the video, and I really hope this helps, and I hope to see you there.